Hi, welcome at the Orange Talks. My name is Peggy and I'm in the studio with my colleague Karin.
Hi, Peggy. Great to be here again.
Karin.
Some interesting information today on sustainability, the climate agenda, public-private partnerships.
Everything that people should know what is the COP30 all about and the COP30 and beyond, because the COP30 is not just an ending point, but it's something that starts a lot of actions as well inside our Dutch companies. So cool that you're connected with us again, because today we have a really special guest with us. She is already since more than 3 years our Consul General here in São Paulo. She, not only for São Paulo, by the way, but she's also responsible for Mato Grosso, for Paraná, Santa Catarina, and Rio Grande do Sul. She has been for more than 10 years working for the Dutch government, but prior to that, she has been working for more than 10 years in the private sector. So a very solid background and very happy to have her in the studio with us. A warm welcome to Wieneke Vullings.
Well, thank you, Peggy. Thank you. It's a great honor to be here in your podcast today.
Well, I didn't know. Did I mention all the region that you're responsible for?
I think so, but I was listening very well. If you maybe try it again.
It's São Paulo, Mato Grosso, Paraná, Santa Catarina, Santa Catarina, and Rio Grande do Sul.
That's it.
My God. And still she found some time to be with us in the studio. How great.
Lucky us, yes.
Yeah, but it's a very important topic today, so I think it's worthwhile the time.
Absolutely. Now, Wieneke, and you're also the one who is driving a bit of the advocacy, not only for the Dutch, but especially also for what the Dutch are really famous for, and they really have it in the DNA, is to drive a really sustainable, social, responsible business conduct. Brings us to the slogan that you have in the Netherlands, solving global challenges together. What does that really mean? Or is it just a slogan that they put on the wall?
Yeah. You might think so, but I think it's actually the heart of what is in the DNA of the Dutch, because it really means that we have to work together. And the Dutch, since long, as everybody knows, are a very small country, and we live on a small piece of land, and we need each other. We need the others. We need not only companies and universities and governments, but we also need other people in the world. We need other influences, because without them we cannot do our trade, we cannot grow, we cannot develop. So this is not only a slogan, it's really in the DNA to work together. And we also know that there's many large challenges ahead of us. So if we don't do something, and if we keep doing what we did, we will get what we got. And we see that already around us. We see climate change, we see floods, we see drought, we see fires in Europe. We see it here in São Paulo state, but we see it in Brazil. So we have to do something before it's too late.
Yeah, it's a slogan that is from out of the government, Wieneke, but I think it's a reach out as well to the whole corporate. It's more like a bridging between the private and the public, I think, right?
It is actually a way of working. It's really how we work. So it tells us something. It might sound for some very logical that you bring together these different groups, that you are inclusive when you develop policies or when you really take action. But the way we work is really about doing it together. And that's not so easy. It's easier said than done. So the slogan is also easier said than done. But we have many examples of how we work together in Brazil on topics like the important topics of climate change. And Brazil is actually for us crucial in many aspects to solve a big challenge that we have ahead of us, which is a challenge on energy. It's a challenge on climate change. We need to do something.
We had, I think, very recently a very good example, right, in the south of Brazil with the floods. I mean, there we saw immediately the teams of the Netherlands stepping in with their technology, innovation, with their knowledge.
Exactly.
Is this then a concrete example, for example, of...
It's definitely a concrete example of how we do that, because it all starts, of course, with the connections, and it starts with seeing where is a problem, where is an issue, and also accepting that we have an issue and we have to do that. And then we have to develop a vision. Where do we want to go? And of course, in Brazil, when it came to the floods, the government came up with a vision. They knew where they want to go, but then you need technologies and you need practical experience. And we were lucky to be able to bring in experts to see and to help and to discuss with experts here what was necessary. And then there's still a very long road ahead of us, because in the Netherlands, it took us 30 years to develop new planning. And it's really not about mitigation only. It's also really about being able to adapt to what is happening around us. And I think that whole change in thinking of how you do that, we need to do that with experts in the field. We need to do that with people here in Brazil. But I think that's a very good example of how we try to work together. We do it also on different topics like port development, green port development. We bring in groups of companies from a certain industry with different knowledges. We organize research funding on biodiversity, for instance, on sustainable agriculture. And with that funding, different academic groups can work together. We will have a new call for proposals soon also on this topic. And these are actual things that we can do. So it's not only about diplomacy or negotiations that are very important, but it's really about taking action, because this is the time to take the action.
Exactly. But what you mentioned, Wieneke, it's working together. It sounds easier saying than actually implementing it, because companies, many countries are seeming to needing or wanting to work alone because of commercial secrets or commercial strategies and so on. So for the private sector is a great mind change. Where do you see in general, in your experience, where you see the main obstacles? What do we have to overcome to change the mindset and say, hey, we need to work together on these climate issues?
Well, I think we have to acknowledge each other's roles and that we have different roles. So I'm quite positive actually in terms of how we can engage private sector, because I think that if we look at why it is difficult, it is very logical. And there, as a government, for instance, we can take a place. So if you talk about transitions, for instance, there are different steps to take. Of course, it's not a linear process. But if we just see it for a moment as a kind of a linear process, you first have to acknowledge that there is a crisis. And in that acknowledgement, for a company, it's sometimes harder to acknowledge that because they do what they did, they have their processes. But if you as a government, you can put a focus on where is the issue and you can say this is something we need to solve because you show the longer term impact. And you get along a number of companies, but then you can also add maybe with finance or with other incentives. You can help them to test or to do a proof of concepts in new ways of working or in new processes. You have to support that. And once you're there and you have a few front runners that you can show, okay, if you work together as front runners, maybe we can raise the bar and we can do a little bit better together, and you will be rewarded for that because you will create a new norm. But of course, then there is also something like bringing those parties together. Companies have to take their fair share, but as governments, we can do many things in that. And then, of course, when it comes to, in the end, regulation, we set the norm, but also we make sure as government that there's a level playing field. And I think if we can create that environment for companies, they are easier into the change as well, because we have to acknowledge each other's roles. And of course, a company also has to be held accountable for what they do. So I think there's no way out anymore. And we know that there's always on the top 5 list of a CEO or on the boards, there is many things. An environment or climate might not be the first thing on the list, and it might even go down a little bit when it comes to difficult times, economic times. But I think there is also where the government can help and also show with continuity of policies, with support, even if it's incentives based on tax or other ways. There's so many instruments that we have that we can use. And that is what we should do.
You have been more than 10 years, right, for the Dutch government working. If you can see now the difference between how they manage this as a government in the Netherlands and then in Brazil, not in order to criticize. So do you see there is a difference how they manage these kind of topics from a governmental point of view?
I think it's very hard to compare. Brazil's 200. It's 200 times bigger than the Netherlands. So when it comes to governance, it would be very unfair to compare, I would say. But what we see is that, and it's not answering the question maybe directly, but maybe we're getting there is that Brazil has so many natural resources. Brazil, the whole electricity network is more than 90%. It's based on renewables. Brazil has 60% of the Amazon rainforest and the basin here. There are so many things that we can learn from each other that we might underestimate also the complexity of how to govern these huge areas of land. So what we can do well is work together in that triangle. And what we can do well is bring in clean tech, for instance, or we can bring in technological solutions like with the water, but also on agricultural area or in the agricultural area. But maybe also on governance. So maybe we can share more even of how we govern and how we put those incentives in place. But I think if on a broad, let's say broadly said, is that when it comes to regulation, for instance, Brazil is very much, I think, on a very advanced level of what is needed.
And they've been catching up very quickly as well. They have been made a lot of changes over the years.
Exactly.
So I think
Exactly. But look at it also from the implementation plan. I mean, look at the picture here. This is where you need to implement your policies. That's different from a polder in the Netherlands.
Exactly.
And that is exactly what you also need to try to understand a little bit better.
Is this maybe also a good moment then for the COP30 coming to Brazil, to Belém, to showcase a little bit more the reality that we have here in Brazil?
Definitely. I think it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And despite the fact of all the challenges that are there in organizing the COP, I think it's a moment where you not only have a platform out there, but you can really showcase, companies can showcase, but also in terms of if you really want to do that transition, it needs to be inclusive. And I think when we talk about also industry, it's sometimes hard, and also for government, to be really inclusive. And I think we have all the important partners and parties there in the Amazon. So there is a platform, there is the opportunity to be inclusive. We can showcase. It also is a bit of an accelerator moment, I think. I always say the COP is not the end of the world, let's say. And it's not only about the negotiations there, the actions. It's just a moment that we make use of. And we do that as well here now with our team, with the embassy. We make use of the fact that the COP is here, like many other organizations do, to showcase what we can do, but also to find each other. Because now, suddenly, we have so many new partners that we weren't aware that they were here. So that maybe in the future also, not only in the Amazon, but organizations working on those topics like biodiversity, like climate change, clean tech, now we know where to find them. And then we meet them there, and then we can go on, because that's only part of the process.
It looks like a big opportunity as well, Karin. I think for our Dutch companies to make a little bit of propaganda, as they say here, a bit of more promotion, to bring more Dutch companies and technologies here.
What we've been hearing a lot about the Dutch companies who are already here is that they need to showcase, or COP30 is also an opportunity for them to showcase how they have tropicalized challenges into local solutions. So the challenges are global. Okay, well, how do you deal with these challenges here? And there's this dialogue between, what Dutch headquarters sets as goals, for example, and what the local challenges are, and
just a bit different, huh?
Yeah, really interesting stories, and really important moment to tell this to the world. I think the companies have a lot to say.
Yes, and it's not only the companies, I want to stress that, but it's really also civil society organizations that we cannot ignore, that they need to be there at the table, and also the indigenous people from Brazil, but also other groups that need to be there. Science needs to be there. Without that, it won't be a big success, but I'm very confident it will, if everybody tries to be there and show their knowledge and their learnings.
Yeah, although Belém is a little bit of a challenge to organize a whole event there, but I think at the other side, it's a very good moment as well to show a little bit the reality of Brazil, right? Because Belém is not São Paulo for sure. Yeah. So it will show a bit of the reality which we live here in the country, right?
Exactly.
So, what would you say to companies, Dutch companies, who still are in this hesitating phase to say, but Brazil is a bit complicated? I mean, what would you say to them?
Well, I would say take the opportunity to at least come to Brazil try to go to the COP. And if not, there's also many events going on in different cities, like Rio de Janeiro, but also here in São Paulo the week before the COP. Be there because it will definitely give you a lot of inspiration, I think, for the future. And also maybe put your head a little bit on the longer term perspective.
We know that you have a very big focus from out of the consulate and also the embassy, Dutch embassy, on the COP, because you recently also recruited an economic officer for COP30 for the private sector. My God, that looks like a responsibility. What is the purpose of having this person specifically in the team now dedicated?
Yeah. So we definitely we definitely also show with that we find it very important topic. It's not only an important event, but it's also an opportunity for the longer term. So what our officer Eva Langeler is doing is working the whole year with us on not only looking forward to this COP moment where the negotiations take place, and which is actually a multilateral forum, and let's be fair, but also make use of the fact that it is taking place in Brazil to bring in the companies and to give them a platform, to give them a place at the table, whether it's virtual or whether it's in real life. This is she's actually really the connection between the topics that will be broadcasted or showcased during the COP, that will be negotiated. And then we look at it from the perspective also of a bilateral relation with Brazil and see what can we do when it comes to private sector engagement. How can we help the private sector engage? How can we bring in new companies or new organizations that want to work in this area, working on clean tech, working on agriculture, working on water even. And so she's actually there to bringing that all together, making sure that we don't miss out on any important new thoughts and ideas and opportunities. And it's definitely worthwhile to have a talk with her.
Okay. It's interesting. It's always about connecting people, right? Connecting the right person to the other right person, or to specific subjects. I think this is a very important role indeed.
If there is something that we have in common at Dutchem and the consulate here, I think this is it, right? Connecting people, bringing the right people in the right place together.
Yeah, and it's also about timing, I would say. So it's connecting, and it's about timing, and it's about operationalization, which for us means also we have a number of flagships defined this year. And that means that we can connect the people, but we also help them to really get foot on the ground. We had, for instance, a mission on climate technologies. Companies came in, we connected them with other people, but we also organize events. So we organize things so that they are not only one time off, talk with people, but that there will be a continuation. We try to develop, or we try to fund research so that we're sure also that the knowledge is there, that the information is there. So we really need to act. It's not only about bringing them together, but we have to follow up. That's it. And that's what Eva also is doing.
Okay. Are there some concrete things that are in the pipeline from now until the COP that, or is that top secret still?
No, well, we will have another, when talking about missions, we will have another mission on agri-technology and innovation coming up in the beginning of October. There will be another event on agroforestry. Well, there are so many activities that we're doing, hopefully to make sure that the COP will be a success.
But it's not only the COP, of course, because as I said, it's COP30 and beyond. Because it's the COP of the action, right, Karin? So we had a conversation with Wieneke, also a water envoy that visited recently here, São Paulo. Also went to Rio Grande do Sul. She was not a COP expert, she said, but I think in a sense she's pretty much familiar to the COPs.
She's very much a climate expert, a water envoy, but she understands a lot about climate change.
Absolutely. She looked indeed, she said, okay, there is indeed, it's the COP of the action, but there is already some progress that is made, maybe not quick enough, but she seems quite positive about the COP30. What is your feeling? Do you share this positive feeling? But what do you have on your bucket list, let's say, for this COP30?
Well, let me be fair. I'm not a COP expert because I haven't been so involved from my expertise. But I think we always have to be optimistic, and especially when it comes to to this COP, I think it's right that we have already had so many agreements done. And I think what is now important is really that we get to the action. And especially when it comes to adaptation, we have, let's say, real-time experiences all over the world every day where we see why it's so necessary that we start to do that. So what we are trying to do is working also on adaptation plans and that we share those plans. And I'm very optimistic that there's more and more attention for that. And so I think we move forward. On the other hand, I also think that we can talk a lot, but let's do it. Yeah, let's do it. And we need to make sure that everybody is also willing to do it. Mm-hmm. And there it also comes to what the COP president said. It's about the multi-rouw. We have to bring together all those people and mobilize everybody, because if you think, well, that's up to somebody else to do because I have something else on my mind, we won't get there. And that's my worry a bit, that we don't feel involved enough. So that involving everybody again and listening to the people who actually know how to live with nature. Mm-hmm. That is what we need to do. But then it's really for us all. It's not only for the other one sitting at the other end of the table.
A very inspirational conversation, Peggy, isn't it?
I think so. And I think it was also a very clear invitation for people, both private and public, to engage more in these topics, because it's only together that we can make the change working. Wieneke, thank you very much for this interesting conversation. You have a lot on the agenda these days, but it was really super that you made some time available to be with us in the studio today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Karen, yeah.
And I would say to the people who watch us and listen to us, thank you very much for being with us today as well. And if you want to be more COP connected, well, then you have a rendezvous again soon at the Orange Talks at Dutchem. See you soon. Ciao.